Hi, everyone. It's a ticket to Christ. We're talking about grief. It could be death of a family member, a pet, loss of a job, um, loss of a job rather, or any divorce or an estrangement with a relationship, maybe a friend that's no longer your friend, a falling out. Just something that is beyond your control. It can fill you with grief because you have that sense of loss. And you can't do a grief study without reading the book of Job, or maybe not even reading it fully, but, at least doing some type of a study or hearing some kind of a message from it. But the book of Job, that's what it's about. A man who lost everything because the enemy, the devil, attacked him, and just how he worked through the grief, his thought process, and what happened to him. And so we're going to pick up Job from Job 1 from verse 9 after they lost everything. Then said his wife unto him, dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. But he said unto her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What, shall we receive good at the hand of God? And shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips? Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that had come upon him, they came every one from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. And when they had lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept, and they rent every one his mantle and sprinkled dust up upon their heads toward heaven. So they sat down with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great. Oh my goodness. Imagine having that state of grief whereby people were speechless for 7 days and 7 nights. And grief, when you're going through grief, it can feel like you can't breathe. You can't even catch your breath. The anxiety, the feelings that can rise up in you can make you feel like you're in a place of like just despair to the core of your soul. And so the only person that can help you when you are in that state of grief, that type of deep grief like that, is the Lord God himself. It's the only refuge and rescue you can find. Because the grief you're feeling is not coming from your physical body, it's coming from your soul. It's coming from a core part of you. And it can make you feel like, you're being, it can leave you feeling breathless, like you can't even breathe, like to even talk about it is painful, right? And so we see that with Job here, on top of all of his loss, his wife goes and gives him bad advice. So you're going through all of this. You would love to have someone who would kind of help you find faith in God. Like what happened with David when he lost everything, Jonathan came and helped him find faith with God. But you're not seeing that here. So with David, it was in Ziklag when David and the men who were with him had gone away to fight. They came back. I think it was the Amalekites or one of the ites had pillaged their area and taken all of their wives, children, and property. And the men were talking of stoning David. They were bawling so hard. But David found faith in God. Right? And there are instances where there was an instant, I think it was that one. Maybe it's not. It might have been another one whereby Jonathan helped David find faith in God. So Jonathan, as a friend, helped him find faith in God. But Job's wife here wasn't doing that. She was giving him awful advice at his greatest hour of need. And then his 3 friends came and said to mourn with him in verse 11. So, they sat with him for 7 days and 7 nights because his grief was very great. And so they didn't say anything. And I commend them for coming and saying, we're going to sit with our friend and mourn with him. I think everybody needs that, during the time of grief, just good friends who can sit with you and just not even say anything, just sit, maybe pray, or do whatever you need to do. Because the truth of the matter is there's nothing anyone can say that's going to help. The only thing that will help is time and you crying out to God. That's the only thing that's going to help. Time and turning to God. Asking him to send ministering angels, asking him to strengthen you, and crying out and crying to him like a child to a parent, telling him how much it hurts. Imagining that you're standing in front of him, pouring it out on his shoulder. And God will send help. He will send relief. He really does do that. And so, but as you read through Job, you kind of notice that the friends started to kind of not be helpful. It wasn't helping what they were saying, what they were doing, because they used it as an opportunity to disregard everything that he was saying and speaking. And God, in the end, of course, commends Job and told his friends that Job was the one who was correct. And so that's why you get a lot of times people saying, don't be a friend like Job's friends, right? Or don't be a wife like Job's wife. During times of grief and challenge, what people really need is just people to listen, pray with them, maybe help bring food. A lot of times people are not eating. They need some care, some TLC, cards. I'm thinking about you, praying for you. You're not alone. You have family, you have friends. We're here for you in whatever way you need. That type of thing. That's what people need during this time. They don't need advice. They don't need to be told, don't mourn, don't cry. They don't need your opinion or any kind of a analysis at that time. It's just going to make them feel worse. They don't even ask too many questions. Just allow them to say what they want to say or don't say what they want to say, because sometimes even to talk about it is painful, because it's so painful. You don't want to give it to talk about it to any and anyone, because they could trample on the pain and make it worse. And so, beloved, if you're going through that level of grief and that type of grief, which I'm familiar with that type of grief, and so that's why I'm able to articulate it in that way. If you're going through that, the book of Job might be a good one to study through for your quiet time. But I've found the Psalms to be very helpful in just really praising God, worshiping God, because in praising and worshiping him, even though you're feeling in grief, it brings you relief. You get relief through praising him, turning wholeheartedly to him and delighting in him. It brings relief to your soul, So to deal with, I would suggest study out Job, but also the Psalms. Pick a psalm every day. Psalm 139 is a good one because it talks about the promises of God. It reminds you that God sees what you're going through. He knows, and he's with you, and he loves you very, very much. So beloved, that is it from me. Hope you're doing well. Take care.